Look at this beautiful honey white bread. Today I'm going to show you how to make it.
Welcome y'all to Robyn on the Farm. Thank you so much for being here today. Today we're going to be making a honey white bread. This is a fantastic recipe that I make all the time. I love this bread for sandwiches. So if you're looking for a good sandwich recipe and you're trying not to use sugars, this is a great recipe. Let's just get started. I'm going to be using my mixer. You can use a Bosch or a KitchenAid or a Braun or any kind of electric mixer. Or you can knead it by hand if you want, or you can even throw this dough into your bread machine dough cycle if you want. You can adapt it any way you want. So to start out, we're gonna use 1 3/4 cups of hot water. I turn my tap all the way on to hot. I let it run for about a minute and then I just fill it up. If you wanna get real technical, it's about 100 to 110 degrees. That's what you want your water to be at to help activate your yeast. But here it goes. 1 3/4 cups of hot water. Just pour that into your mixer. And then you want 1/3 cup of honey. I sprayed this little thing before I put the honey in. It'll help the honey come out a little bit better and so you can get all of your honey out. So this is what I do. We have cheap honey and we have expensive honey. I like to use the cheap honey in my bread and I like to use the expensive honey on top of my bread because this is just a sweet, good honey. That's great. But this is the honey that tastes like wildflowers. I just really enjoy this kind of honey. That's just what I do. So 1/3 cup of honey, any kind of honey you want to use. Of course, the different kind of honeys will have different flavors. Some will be lighter, some will be stronger, but 1/3 cup of honey, put it in your mixer. Mix this around for a second with your spatula. I'm just gonna do that a little bit, kind of get it dissolved a little bit into the hot water. The warmth from the water and the sugars in the honey will help activate our yeast. So that's why you do it in this order. Here's a brand new thing of my active dry yeast. I just used up my old container of it, so it was time to pull a new one out of the freezer. I store these in the freezer. I have probably at least 10 of these in my freezer. And you just store it in there and it stays good forever. I just pull it out when it's time to make bread and then I put it back in there when I'm done. So keep your yeast in your freezer. This recipe calls for a tablespoon of active dry yeast. So just sprinkle that on top of your honey and your water. And there we go. Our next ingredient is butter. So this is 1/4 cup of melted butter. So let's just pour that into our mixer. 1/4 cup, so 1/2 stick of butter melted. If you melt it in your microwave, remember to cover it. If you've never had butter explode in your microwave, well, count yourself lucky. I've done it several times and I never seem to learn, but cover it with some plastic wrap or something, or you might have an explosion of butter in your microwave and it is a mess. Okay, our next ingredient is an egg. You want 1 egg. I went ahead and cracked this and beat it up so I wouldn't have to wash my hands, but just go ahead and throw that into your mixer bowl too. Now it's time for our bread flour. We need 6 cups of flour. You can use bread flour or you can use all-purpose flour. You'll just get a really nice texture if you use bread flour, but you can really use either one. I want you to use what you have. So let's do 6 cups of this. I buy my bread flour and my all-purpose flour in 25-pound bags, and then I store it in buckets. And I keep it in my pantry, just easy to pull out anytime. I go through several bags a month because I make so much bread. Our very last ingredient is salt. So we need 2 1/4 teaspoons of salt. Just pour that right on in there, right on top. 2 1/4 teaspoons. There we go. And those are all of our ingredients. So simple, huh? All right, now that we have all of our ingredients in the mixing bowl, it's time to turn the mixer on. Let me put this top on so that I don't have flour flying around my kitchen. I just love these mixers. I think these are one of the blessings of living in the modern world. I don't have to hand knead my bread, spend my time doing that, unless I want to. I do like to hand knead sometimes. I think it's pretty therapeutic. But I'm gonna turn this on to speed 2 and let it knead for about 6 to 8 minutes. This thing is just glorious. I've gone through probably 5 KitchenAids. I've burned them out making bread. But I haven't worn this thing out, and this thing is like a workhorse. I love it. Let's turn this on, let it knead the dough for 6 to 8 minutes.
This is what you want your dough to look like after a couple minutes of kneading. If it's too sticky, it'll be sticking to the sides and the bottom. Just add maybe a 1/4 cup more of flour and go from there.
Okay, our dough has been kneading for about 8 minutes. Like I said, these mixers are awesome. They save me so much time. I was able to kind of clean up the kitchen and throw in a load of laundry while my bread was kneading. Otherwise, I would have been stuck here in the kitchen hand kneading some dough. Okay, so see, it comes out really easily. It's not stuck to the sides or anything. I can touch it, I can move it. Look at this. See that? That looks good. This means you have really well-developed gluten if you can kind of stretch out your dough a little bit. So this is what you want your dough to look like. It is nice. Now it's time to let it rise. I've got this big bowl right here. I'm gonna spray my bowl. I'm gonna plop this into the bowl and cover it. This is a tea towel. I just put some hot water on it. And I am just gonna cover my bowl with this tea towel. And I'm gonna let this dough rise for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I will show you what it looks like at that point. Okay, our honey white bread dough has been rising. It's been a little bit more than an hour. I got a little busy, but here is what it looks like. That looks great. I think normally it'll take probably 45 minutes to an hour and a half for your dough to rise really well like this. You don't want it to like over rise, because then your bread just isn't gonna turn out as well as it could. But this looks great. This has risen really well. So you want it to look about like this. So the next step is you're just gonna punch this down. And I hate doing this because I just think it's so pretty all risen like that, but now you're gonna punch it down just like that. Now I'm gonna turn it out onto my counter. Okay, there we go. And you can see the dough is like, you know, I can work with it, I can move it around, it's really pliable and great. Now I'm gonna press it out, press all the little bubbles out of it, all the little air pockets and air bubbles. Then you're gonna need something to divide your dough up with. You can use a knife. I have this really cool like dough cutter, and I'm just gonna cut it into 2 equal pieces. This recipe makes 2 loaves of honey white bread. If you don't want 2 loaves, you can always just cut this recipe in half, or I think it's really great if you only need 1 loaf, make 2 of them because it's just the same amount of effort, and give a loaf away to somebody. They would really appreciate that. Or you can even just stick it in the freezer for later. Now that I have my dough divided, I'm gonna shape these each into a loaf and stick them in my loaf pans. These are my amazing cast iron loaf pans. I love these things. I mean, they are like the coolest thing. They are definitely my favorite thing in my kitchen right now. I love these things. They just bring me joy is all I can say. I just love them. So I'm gonna shape these into loaves. Pat it out. I'm gonna roll it up into a tight loaf. Tuck the ends under, just like that. Just kind of pinch all the seams together, tuck it under. There's lots of different ways you can do this, but it's not really that big of a deal. It doesn't have to be a science, doesn't have to be hard, just whatever you're comfortable with doing. Okay. Just make sure the bottom's all kind of pinched together. There we go. It's gonna look amazing. Now I'm just gonna throw this into my loaf. I did oil these up really good. I always oil up my cast iron before I use it. So I oiled this up really good. If you do that, your loaves are just gonna slide right out. Okay, so throw that in your loaf pan. There we go. Now, I'm gonna let these rise for about another 45 minutes to an hour, give or take. Just kind of depends on how hot or cold your house is, but you're gonna want to let these rise one more time. You're gonna want the top of the loaf to be risen a little bit above these bread pans. And you'll know that it's ready then. And then it'll be time to pop them on into the oven. So I will show you after these have risen what you want them to look like. Okay, this is what you want your dough to look like when it's risen. It's been rising for about an hour. It's nice and over the top of the bread pan sides, and it is ready to go in the oven. I'm gonna pop these in the oven at 350 degrees and let them bake for about 30 minutes. Beautiful. Oh, these look so good. Time to turn these out of the loaf pans. Let's see how easily they come out. Oh yeah, look at that. Just came out, no problem. Didn't have to pry them out with a knife or anything like that. So I'm gonna put these on this wire cooling rack and let them cool. There we go. No problem, just came right on out, just slid out. Just oil up your cast iron bread pans if you use them, and your bread will just slide on out. Normally this is the part where I'll cut into the bread and take a little bite and show you the middle of it, but today I have different plans for these 2 loaves of bread. I'm actually gonna go take a loaf of bread to 2 different people and just kind of visit with them for a minute and let them know I'm thinking about them. So that's what I'm gonna do with this bread, and that's a great thing to do. If you're a bread maker and you start getting into making bread makes great gifts. Everybody appreciates it, especially homemade bread. Oh, it's such a treat for everybody. So that's what I'm gonna do with these. I'm gonna put them in bread bags and take them by some people's houses. So, but I do wanna show it to you. This is some honey white bread I made for my family yesterday. So let me just show you this. Now, like I said, this makes amazing sandwich bread. Let me show you a little slice of this. Here it is, can you see it? It's like a nice little piece of sandwich bread. Looks just like the stuff you buy from the store, but so much better. So much better tasting, so much better for you. Oh, and it's just better. It's like moist and yummy. I'm gonna put the recipe for this honey white bread down in the description. I'll also put some links to some of the things you've seen me use in this video in case you're looking for them so you can find them easily. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time on Robyn on the Farm.
Please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know if you make this bread. I'd love to hear how it went.